Welcome back to Beneath the Long Man's Feet. Here we are in the Northern Hemisphere approaching the autumn equinox. Now I don't have a tale about the equinox as such, but it's a tale that came to me the other day that owes its origin very much to a book called Green Mantle by Charles de Lint. Wonderful author, wonderful book. And I've called this Herne's Apprentice. Hope you like it. Tom was very disillusioned with life. His parents had been killed unexpectedly, and he had moved to a small modern house on the edge of a modern development. His life wasn't good, he wasn't in a good place, he'd renounced his Christian faith after what happened to his parents, and he didn't know where he was going to go. And the only solace he could find was that his modern house was on the edge of the development, and backing it was a field that then led up a hill and up to a forest beyond. And he used to sit for hours in his garden, just listening to the sounds of birdsong and the wind, just trying to make sense of his life. Then one day he heard a sound, like a distant drumming and a piping, almost like panpipes or a flute. Well, there must be something going on the hill above him. He paid no attention to it. But it carried on for another few days, until eventually Tom decided he must find out what is going on. So he went along the field and up the hill towards the sound of the music. And at the top of the hill, he saw something strange. It was like a structure, maybe a tree trunk or something, covered in moss and bracken, half buried. And he pushed aside some of the moss and the bracken, and it felt hard, like stone. And the minute he touched the stone, the music stopped. And he heard a voice. At last you've come. I've been waiting for you these last few days. Tom spun round and was aghast to see a very strange-looking figure indeed. A figure dressed in green linen and wool, brown cape, with strange eyes and elongated ears. But most striking figure was he had antlers coming out of his hood. Each antler was 7 tines poking out of it. Are you doing some sort of live-action role play or fantasy filming or something? Said Tom. The figure just laughed. No, not at all. Well, that's a very good costume, said Tom. What are you doing here? It's not a costume. And then he lifted back his hood and bent his head down, and Tom could see that the antlers weren't indeed costumes. They were coming from the figure's head. Tom stepped back in horror. Are you the devil or some demon come to taunt me for my renouncing my Christian faith? The figure looked at him kindly and said, I am no devil, I am no demon. I am a guardian of this land, and I mean you no harm. I come to you in this form, as it seems to be less frightening than some of my other forms. Let me show you. And then he morphed into a great big deer. Red deer with 7 tines on each antler once more. Talking deer would indeed cause a man some kind of concern. And then the deer morphed into another figure sitting cross-legged on the floor, holding a torch and a snake with a whole host of animals about his feet, and again antlers with 7 tines coming out of his head. This is me as Cononus, Lord of the Animals. But you may know me as this, the Green Man. And the figure morphed into a green man. Not so much a green man or a man wearing green, but a man made of the very green of the earth itself, of plants and bark and leaves. I am the guardian of these woods and this land. In whatever form I take, my job is to look after these lands and make sure that they are cared for. And then he morphed back into the form of the antlered figure. This is my form of Herne, a hunter. And you may know it best. But I have something to ask of you. You need not fear me. I am no devil or no Christian. What is it you want? Said Tom. I want to show you something. I want to show you the song of the wind, the sound of the trees, the song of the land about your feet. Come with me and listen. Come to the forest. And with that, the figure morphed into a red deer once more and pounded off towards the forests. Tom had no choice but to follow. He was compelled, and he ran after the deer until he was in the deepest, darkest woods and found himself completely lost. And he remembered the words Listen to the song of the wind. Listen to the song of the trees in the land. So he sat down between an oak tree and a great beech tree, and he closed his eyes and he tried to call to mind the song of the leaves. And the song of the leaves and the song of the land and the songs of the wind and the animals that inhabit this land came to him as he sat there. And he began to understand that he was more than just somebody living on this land. He was part of it. And then a figure came back, Herne, leaning against the tree, and smiled. I see you're beginning to understand. And he wasn't mocking Tom, but more smiling at him. Come, Tom, I will change into the form of the stag and ride on my back, and I will take you through these woods, and I will tell you more of the songs and the stories of the old way. You will hear the stories of the goddess and the gods and the land and the folklore that must be protected. Come, quickly. Tom climbed onto the back of the great stag, and the great stag bounded off through the woods as fast as it could go. And into Tom's mind, as he rushed through the trees and over the pasture land and heathland and moorland, stories of the old ways came into his head in an instant, and yet he knew the stories as soon as they arrived. Stories of the goddess, of the gods of old, of the tales and the people and how the land is protected, of Herne, the guardian of the wild wood, of Crononus, of Pan, of the green man. All these stories came to him, and all at once he knew this had to be protected. And at last they came to a place where the stag let him down, and there was a great standing stone carved with simple yet intricate figures that sort of made out shapes of deer antlers, or the sun's rays, or the moon, the three phases of the moon, all simple, all interconnected, yet so complex. And before him he saw a great forest stretching for miles as far as his eye could see. Where are we? Said Tom. This is where I first met you, said Herne, now changed back into his form. And I would ask this of you. Be my apprentice and look after these lands here, for I can no longer do that. You see these trees as they were, man has encroached on them and made them where you live now. And it has to stop. We have to protect what is left of the lands around us, Tom, and this is where you come in. And if you do this for me and help me here, when your time comes, I will come to you at the wild hunt and carry you gratefully into the land of the ever-living ones, where you may live the rest of your days in peace and harmony. Tom felt he had to do this. This was his purpose. And he bowed his head and nodded his assent. Herne gave him an amulet to put it over his neck. He said, this will protect you. This will tell all the peoples of this land, the gods, the goddesses, and the folklore, the forest sprites, that you are my apprentice. They will not harm you, and they will help you wherever they can. And Tom looked at the amulet, and it was a figure carved of the antlers, the three moons, the triple moon, and the sun's rays, all carved together in that simple but intricate pattern. And this I give you to call me should you need me. And he handed Tom a small drum of a deer skin, and carved round the edge were again the intricate figures of the antlers, the triple moon, and the sun's rays. Now I must be going, Tom. Call me if you need me, and I will see you when the time comes. With that, Herne was gone. And when Tom opened his eyes, he was back on the hill, looking out across the modern development in front of him, with only the forest behind him now. And he noticed that the tall structure covered in moss and weeds was in fact that standing stone. Well, the next day Tom came back to the stone with some shears, some scissors, and he cut away all of the moss from that stone, so it was there for all to see, with all the intricate carved figures. And he spent the rest of his days looking after the land about him, helping the animals, telling the stories of the old ones, the stories of the goddess and the god, keeping the folklore alive and keeping the memory of the old ones in today's world. And everybody he spoke to, everybody he could, he got them to tell the stories as well, so that they would never die. And he passed that knowledge on to his son, for eventually he married and had a happy life with a family. And when it was time for him to come and leave this world, Herne did as he promised and rode up with the wild hunt and take Tom to the land of Herne, land of the ever-living ones, where he could live in peace and harmony with the old one. Before he went, he gave his son the amulet, and he gave his son the drum, so that his son may continue to be a shepherd of his land of Herne and be Herne's new apprentice. That is my short story. Thank you very much for listening. I do hope you liked it. Do drop me a line on Facebook or YouTube. Let me know what you thought about it. Always good to hear from you. Facebook or YouTube, whichever your preferred medium, beneath the Long Man Speak. But now, as always, I hope you have a wonderful spring equinox, autumn equinox even. Spring equinox if you're in the southern hemisphere. Well rescued there. But for now, my friends, I bid you hail and farewell.